You know that moment when you're at a party and everyone has forgotten you're there because you haven't said something in so long, and then suddenly you say something and everyone just turns and stops talking and looks at you? That's kind of how making this video feels to me. I could spice things up for you, just a little bit. So to ease myself back into the tumultuous waters of BookTube, I decided to do a top reads of 2015 style video because everyone else is doing it. I thought it looked cool. I picked 10 books that I read last year that I really enjoyed. They weren't necessarily released in 2015, I just got to them in that year, and I would like to share them with you guys. So let's get started. First on the list is The Boy Who Lost Fairyland by Catherine M. Valenti. This is the 4th book in her Fairyland series, and I cannot get enough of it. It's a series that's very clearly inspired by classic children's literature like Alice in Wonderland, The Phantom Tollbooth, The Wizard of Oz, and I love how the author pulls from those series and really makes an original, but it really sucks when you search for a word but you can't find it. I don't know. It's original, and I love it, and the writing is fantastic. I found myself rereading specific chapters because they affected me so deeply, and this is a series that I recommended to everyone. I know I've talked about it before in like a dozen videos last year, so moving on. Next on the list is Slade House by David Mitchell, which is the cutest, most beautiful, most everything book that I've ever read, at least in the past year. Yes, David Mitchell is a fantastic writer, but one of the things that really sticks out to me when I read one of his novels is the dialogue. It feels so lifelike, and it really makes me feel like he understands people. And not just people that have a similar life experience as him, which I feel like is a limitation to other authors. They can only write about people that have a similar perspective as them. He writes about everyone, and he writes about them so convincingly. Not to mention that it's a beautifully crafted book. I don't much see what the point of this little square being cut out is, but looks nice, doesn't it? Next on the list is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Yes, that is the title. I hadn't read this before last year because I saw the Disney movie, which kind of creeped me out as a kid, and I just thought the story was very clear to people who hadn't even read the books before, but you actually get a completely different experience reading the book. I really think this is going to be one of those books that I come back to every year and try and reread because it's a really fun, entertaining time reading this book. Next on my list is Wonder Boys by Michael Chabon. This book is set in Pittsburgh, and Michael Chabon is from Pittsburgh, I believe. I'm living in Pittsburgh currently, which is how that all ties in. So I definitely wanted to read this book because it was relevant to my geographical interests, which is a fancy way of saying I live here, so I wanted to read it. This book is very outlandish in the types of characters it talks about and the situations that these characters get into, but that is what makes this book so great, is that the author writes about these events so convincingly, or like, yeah, that could totally happen. And it probably wouldn't, but in this book it feels like it could happen at any moment. I would compare Michael Chabon, at least for me, to Donna Tartt, whose writing is also somewhat challenging for me. I have to really focus on the words and be an active reader. But after reading either of those authors' works, for me, I'm just like, wow, that was an incredible experience, and I'm so glad that I did it. Next on my list is Super Mutant Magic Academy by Gillian Tamaki. This book is one of the reasons why I'm glad bookstores still exist and that you can walk in and pick up books and look through them and decide to go home with them. Because if I hadn't seen this book in real life, I probably never would have read it. This comic series, which I think was started as a webcomic, does a similar thing with the Harry Potter universe that Carry On by Rainbow Rowell does, but it does it in a different way, and it's more of a relatable experience for people like me, at least, who have a somewhat non-optimistic, shall we say, outlook on life. The next 2 books I have to talk about are both by the same author, and I never would have imagined myself enjoying books by her, but that just goes to show you how wrong you can be sometimes about your own life. The first of the 2 books is The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I have talked about before. I know I have. This book is incredible, if only for the fact that it is so carefully researched, and the characters in this book are intertwined with real people from history so carefully that it blows my mind. In previous videos, I have isolated some of the aspects of this book and said if you enjoy these things, then you will like this book. But really, I think everyone would enjoy this book because it is... I'm gonna stop talking about it. The second of those 2 books by Elizabeth Gilbert is Big Magic, which is her non-fiction book about how to be creative and how to avoid living in self-doubt. This book is not on my top reads of 2015 list because I thought it was incredible. It's on this list because it gave me the push that I needed to start doing things I needed to do in my life. This is the equivalent of that person in your life who always tells you exactly what you need to hear, but never what you want to hear. They're not there to be nice, they're not there to coddle you, they are there to be the fire under your butt that gets you going and gets you creating things again. Also, being a huge Elizabeth Gilbert fan now, I'm really glad that I read this book because it gives insight into her writing experience and her writing process for past novels like the one that I just mentioned. If you don't know who she is, that's totally fine. You can still enjoy this book at a surface level, and I think it's really going to be helpful for a lot of people. Next on my list, and oh my god, can you guess what it is? It's Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. If I was doing this in order, it would be the best for last, but there is no order here, it's just completely random. I feel like Emily St. John Mandel at this point owes me royalties because I have recommended this book to, I don't want to say hundreds of people, but a lot of people. I work in a bookstore, so it's not that big of a stretch. Basically, anyone who walks in and says, I need a book to read, I hand them this because they will never, ever be disappointed. The second to last book on this list is Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde, and it's really unfortunate this book is called Shades of Grey for obvious reasons. I've definitely talked about this book before, but to refresh your memories, this is an exciting, hilarious science fiction romp in the style of Douglas Adams, and I think this is a brilliant start to a series. One thing that's unique to this book, at least in my experience as a reader, is that it places such an important value on sight and color, so even when you're reading it, you have a very powerful, vivid image of everything that's going on in your mind. And I know that a lot of times we imagine scenes as they're happening in books, but this really takes it to a whole different level. This book was recommended to me, kind of, but not really. I just had a friend say he really enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it too. And I'm super glad I did, so now I'm recommending it to you. Last on the list is Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler, which is on this list because it probably produced the most feelings in me out of any book that I read last year. I don't know if that's good or bad, it's just a fact. I feel like because of that, I have a very powerful experience of reading this book associated with this actual physical book. A lot of people love this book, but I've also seen a lot of criticism about this book. Fundamentally, everyone is right. This book is very juvenile, but that's kind of the point. Basically, this book is so close to my heart, and I am kind of surprised by that, but I'm okay with it. So those are my top reads of 2015. I loved each and every one of these books, and I wouldn't have found out about a lot of them if it hadn't been for you guys on BookTube, so really I have to thank you. It's just a great system we have here. Let's keep doing it. So that is going to be it for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you've read any of the books that I've talked about today, feel free to comment in the comment section below. And if you have any recommendations for me, I also welcome those. I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!